Close your eyes for a moment and imagine the distant sound of an ancient ocean, keeping secrets beneath its waters. Waves that whisper erased stories, forgotten names, and a wisdom that time itself tried to silence. And what if those waves spoke not only of a lost continent, but of the spiritual memory of humanity itself, fragmented, scattered, waiting to be remembered? There are civilizations that vanish physically, yet remain alive on another level, in the collective unconscious, in the unexplainable intuitions, in dreams that seem not to belong to this life. Perhaps Atlantis is more than a myth. Perhaps it is a remembrance of who we once were, when humankind still walked in harmony with the invisible forces of creation. And what if what we call a legend were in truth the reflection of a collective forgetting? A kind of spiritual amnesia that makes us endlessly seek something we feel we've lost. A deep connection with the whole, with the mystery, with our very essence. Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, described Atlantis in hundreds of psychic readings performed while in trance. For him, this continent was not a creation of imagination, but the remnant of a real civilization, highly advanced in technology, energetic medicine, and spiritual wisdom. A people who understood matter not merely as something physical, but as energy shaped by consciousness. According to Cayce, the Atlanteans mastered the use of giant crystals that channeled cosmic energy, creating forms of transport and communication that we are only beginning to comprehend today. But what is most striking in his descriptions is not the technological aspect. It is the idea that science and spirituality were not separate in that time. Material knowledge was seen as an extension of the knowledge of the soul. In his readings, Cayce revealed that Atlantis was a mirror of what modern humanity could become, a society capable of transforming thoughts into tangible realities, of healing through sound vibrations, of understanding the body as an intelligent field of energy. What we now call quantum physics was, for them, simply everyday life. Yet the same force that elevated them also became the cause of their downfall. Edgar Cayce affirmed that the destruction of Atlantis did not begin in the waters, but in the consciousness of its people. The decline was not merely geological. It was moral, vibrational, and spiritual. As Atlantean technology advanced, the same power that once served healing began to be used for domination. The wisdom that once united them fractured into struggles for power, and the light of knowledge became a flame that burned instead of illuminated. According to Cayce, the collapse was the natural consequence of a deep disconnection between science and ethics, between mind and heart. The energy that sustained their cities began to destabilize, reflecting the inner chaos of a civilization that had forgotten the sacredness of life. What fell apart on the outside was only the mirror of what had already crumbled within, the loss of the consciousness of unity. There are those who say that every catastrophe carries a symbolic echo. In that sense, the fall of Atlantis would be an ancient reminder that the true danger has never been in the forces of nature, but in human choices that separate reason from compassion. Cayce saw the destruction not as divine punishment, but as an inevitable rebalancing, a return to the cosmic order that humankind itself had broken. For Edgar Cayce, the story of Atlantis did not end with its submersion. He said that the Atlantean spirit, the spiritual and scientific memory of that civilization, would one day manifest again on Earth, not as a continent rising from the waters, but as a collective consciousness awakening within modern humanity. This return would be the rebirth of ancient knowledge, now reinterpreted in the light of a new era. Cayce affirmed that many of those who once lived in Atlantis would reincarnate during this time of transition to continue their interrupted mission, to rebuild the bridge between reason and the sacred, between intellect and soul. This new generation of seekers would not use giant crystals or luminous temples, but the technologies of thought, mental energy, and empathy, invisible tools, yet equally powerful. The return of Atlantis, therefore, would not be a physical event, but an inner awakening, a silent movement within humanity that begins when we start to recognize the power of intentions, the influence of thoughts, and the impact of emotions on the world we create. For Cayce, remembering Atlantis was, above all, remembering who we truly are, conscious creators of the reality we experience. Among Edgar Cayce's most striking prophecies were those that spoke of great transformations on Earth, not only physical, but spiritual as well. He described a time when the poles would shift, the seas would advance upon the lands, and the climate would become unpredictable. Yet his words went beyond catastrophe. Every geological change would mirror an inner transformation of humanity. Just as the planet adjusts, the human spirit reorganizes itself in search of balance. Cayce saw the Earth as a living organism in constant dialogue with human consciousness. When fear, ambition, and imbalance prevail, nature itself responds, not with punishment, but with movement, a natural readjustment between the visible and the invisible. In this view, catastrophes would not mark the end of times, but the beginning of a new cycle of learning and collective awakening. According to him, this planetary transition would bring unique opportunities. The souls prepared for this period would have the mission of rebuilding a new relationship between humankind and the planet. One based on cooperation, practical spirituality, and the remembrance that every human action leaves a vibrational mark upon the whole. Thus, the changes of the Earth would not be signs of destruction, but the birth of a new consciousness, the emergence of a humanity capable of living in harmony with the invisible laws of life. Edgar Cayce believed that many of us carry, on a spiritual level, the memories of Atlantis, not as visual recollections, but as impulses, talents, and inexplicable intuitions. They are people drawn to ancient civilizations, to energy healing, to psychic phenomena, or simply to the desire to understand the mystery of existence. It is as if a dormant fragment of that wisdom still echoes within our dreams, in the passions we cannot explain, and in the inner callings we feel without knowing their origin. For Cayce, these memories were not merely symbolic. They were imprinted upon the soul, like a living archive that transcends time and the physical body. In his readings, he said that the soul is a field of energy that stores everything it experiences, and that part of spiritual awakening consists in recovering those memories, not to relive the past, but to understand the present with greater awareness. Perhaps that is why so many people today feel as if they are remembering something they have never lived. These are subtle traces of a knowledge the intellect cannot name, yet the heart recognizes it instantly. When we connect with that deep sense of familiarity, we are, in a way, responding to the call of the inner Atlantis, the invitation to restore the wisdom humanity once forgot and now seeks to rediscover within itself. If at any moment in this video, something within you seemed to recognize these words, as if they were ancient memories echoing in a silent chamber of the soul, perhaps it is not a coincidence. Edgar Cayce said that spiritual truth never imposes itself. It simply awakens at the exact moment we are ready to hear it. And when that happens, we feel a quiet familiarity, as though we were finally returning home after a long time away. These stories about Atlantis, about the fall and rebirth of human consciousness, are not just distant myths. They are mirrors of our own journey. The moments when we too have fallen, forgotten who we are, and needed to relearn how to rebuild from silence. If this reflection touched something inside you, allow it to remain a little longer, like a seed that germinates slowly. And if you feel that this message is part of your path of self-discovery, Share in the comments what moved you the most. Leave a like, subscribe, and help this message reach others who also seek meaning, memory, and belonging. Every small gesture is a way of continuing to write this ancient story, the story of humanity trying to remember itself. The fall of Atlantis, according to Edgar Cayce, was neither punishment nor a simple accident of nature. It was a karmic movement, the inevitable consequence of a collective imbalance. He said that every collapse hides within its pain an opportunity for rebirth. When a civilization turns away from its essence, the universe, or rather, the natural laws of harmony, finds ways to restore balance. That, he said, was what happened to Atlantis, a great cosmic realignment in which human pride had to give way to the humility of the soul. Cayce saw the destruction of the continent as a reflection of human crises, the same process that happens within us when we lose meaning, when the ego dominates consciousness and we are forced to begin again. Just as the continent sank into the sea, so too are we at certain points in life, submerged into experiences that strip away what is superficial, allowing the essential to emerge once more. The hidden purpose of the fall, then, would be purification, not punishment, but deep learning, the realization that true power is born from the union of wisdom and love. Cayce believed that by remembering this lesson, humanity could avoid repeating the same mistake. And perhaps that is why the story of Atlantis remains alive, as a silent reminder that every destruction can be the beginning of a new creation. And what if the true lost continent were not beneath the ocean, but within each of us, buried under layers of fear, haste, and forgetfulness? What if what we call the lost memory of humanity were, in fact, the remembrance of a state of consciousness in which human beings lived in harmony with everything, with the earth, with one another, and with the mystery that dwells within? Perhaps the fall of Atlantis symbolizes our own disconnection from essence, a gradual drift away from the quiet wisdom that still whispers within every heart. Cayce said that the soul never forgets, it only sleeps, and awakening is not something that happens outside, but a gentle movement from within when the mind becomes receptive to the voice of the spirit. So the question remains, are we ready to remember, not merely as curious observers of an ancient myth, but as conscious participants in a new stage of human evolution? Because perhaps remembering is not about reliving the past, but about recreating the future with greater clarity, compassion, and purpose. If something in this video lit a quiet spark within you, perhaps it is only the first memory of many more to come. The wisdom Cayce shared does not speak of a distant time, but of a present calling, an invitation for each of us to rebuild, little by little, the bridge between reason and soul, between science and spirit. Atlantis may have vanished from the waters, but not from human consciousness. It lives on in every act of compassion, in every thought that seeks to understand rather than judge, and in every soul that chooses to walk with purpose. If these words resonated in your heart, let them echo a little longer. And if you wish others to find this same space of calm and reflection, leave a like, subscribe, and share this video. Not out of habit, but because every gesture from an awakened soul helps rebuild what we once believed was lost. The memory of humanity may not be in ruins, only waiting for someone to remember it again.